You won't see this twist coming. Watch until the end to find out how the fate of the characters unfolds. The day the divorce papers were finalized, I felt a strange kind of emptiness. It wasn't the dramatic breakdown I had imagined, nor the anger that had once burned so fiercely inside me. Instead, there was only a dull, hollow ache. I stepped out of the courthouse, papers clutched tightly in my hand, and realized that the life I had spent years building had crumbled quietly, almost politely, around me. Home didn't feel like home anymore. Every room echoed with memories I no longer wanted to confront. The laughter we once shared, the whispered promises at night, the silent fights that grew heavier over time. It was as if the walls themselves mourned what had been lost. I wandered from room to room, aimless, a ghost haunting her own life. Friends tried to reach out, offering sympathy, coffee dates, and empty words that floated away before they could touch me. I answered texts with half-hearted smiles and promises to catch up later, knowing deep down I wouldn't. I didn't want to talk. I didn't want to rehash every wound. I wanted to disappear. It was Max, my golden retriever, who refused to let me. He followed me everywhere, his soft eyes filled with a loyalty that demanded nothing in return. He didn't ask questions. He didn't urge me to move on or tell me it would get better. He simply stayed, pressing his warm body against mine whenever the loneliness became too much to bear. One evening, I collapsed onto the living room floor, unable to hold in the grief any longer. Silent sobs racked my body. Before I could sink any deeper into that abyss, Max nudged my hand gently with his nose, then laid his head in my lap. His simple, unwavering presence grounded me in a way nothing else could. Maybe, I thought as I clutched his fur and let the tears fall, I wasn't completely alone after all. Before you continue, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to the channel. I've got another compelling story coming tomorrow that you definitely don't want to miss. This one's just the beginning. Stay tuned for more twists and turns, and don't forget to hit that notification bell so you're the first to know when the next chapter is up. Thanks for being part of this journey. The days after that night blurred into each other, a slow, painful crawl through the ruins of what used to be my life. Morning light felt harsh and cold. Nights stretched endlessly, filled with doubts and regrets. I barely had the energy to move, to eat, to exist. But Max kept me tethered to the world outside my pain. Every morning, he would sit by the door, leash in his mouth, looking at me with patient, expectant eyes. At first, I resisted. I didn't want to leave the safety of my broken cocoon. I didn't want to face the world that kept turning as if nothing had happened. But Max wouldn't take no for an answer. His silent insistence eventually wore me down. Our walk started short, just around the block. The air felt heavy, and the simple act of putting one foot in front of the other was exhausting. But Max trotted beside me, tail wagging, as if this tiny victory was worth celebrating. Somehow, step by step, he taught me how to breathe again. As we ventured farther, I began noticing things I'd long forgotten to see. The way the morning sun painted gold across the rooftops, the scent of fresh-cut grass, the easy smiles of strangers passing by. Life, raw, real, and beautiful, still pulsed around me. It was a quiet revelation. One afternoon, as we sat on a park bench, Max resting his head on my knee, I realized something profound. Healing wasn't some grand cinematic moment where everything clicked back into place. It was made of tiny choices: to get up, to go outside, to keep walking even when it hurt. Max didn't need words to teach me that. His presence was enough. His silent, steadfast companionship was stitching me back together in ways I hadn't thought possible. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. A real, genuine smile. And Max thumped his tail against the bench as if he understood. Maybe, just maybe, I was going to find my way back after all. Not every day was a triumph. Some mornings, I woke up gripped by an unbearable weight, convinced that nothing would ever truly be okay again. The loss, the betrayal, the endless string of what ifs haunted me like shadows I couldn't escape. One rainy morning, it all came crashing down. I sat on the kitchen floor, my back against the cold cabinet doors, feeling utterly hollow. Tears blurred my vision as the storm outside rattled against the windows. Every bit of strength I'd built over the past few weeks seemed to crumble in an instant. I was tired, so tired of pretending to be okay, of moving forward when my heart still bled from wounds no one could see. Max approached quietly, sensing something was wrong. He didn't bark or whine. Instead, he curled his warm body against me, resting his chin gently on my lap. I buried my hands in his fur, sobbing freely, not caring how broken I sounded. Max didn't judge. He didn't offer empty reassurances or expect me to be strong. He simply stayed. At that moment, I realized just how much I owed this dog, my lifeline when I couldn't stay afloat on my own. His loyalty, his unwavering love, had given me something no human could: pure, unconditional acceptance. The storm outside raged on, but inside, a fragile thread of determination began to weave itself through my chest. Maybe I didn't have to have it all figured out. Maybe healing wasn't about moving on overnight, but about allowing myself the grace to fall apart and rebuild, piece by painful piece. Max lifted his head and licked a tear from my cheek, his tail thumping softly against the floor. That small, tender gesture was enough. Enough to remind me that even when the world felt like it was ending, there were still reasons to stay, reasons to keep trying. That day, I made a silent promise to myself and to Max. I would keep fighting, not because I felt strong, but because I wasn't alone. I had him, and sometimes one loyal heart is all it takes to start over. I'll take a short pause. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and if you've ever gone through something similar. I'd love to read your stories. And if you'd like to hear more, don't forget to subscribe. I'm continuing now. The days after the stormy morning were different. Not easier, but different. There was a quiet resolve inside me, a tiny voice that said, "You are not broken beyond repair." And every time I doubted it, Max was there, reminding me without words. I started taking small steps. At first, it was simple things: getting dressed before noon, taking Max for longer walks, cooking meals instead of ordering takeout. They might have seemed insignificant to someone else, but to me, they were victories. Walking with Max became our ritual. Every morning, we explored a little further, venturing beyond the familiar streets of my neighborhood. I noticed things I hadn't seen in years: flowers blooming in hidden gardens, neighbors tending to their porches, children laughing as they raced to school. Life was still happening, even when mine had fallen apart. There was one particular morning when the sun was just rising and the world was bathed in soft gold. Max and I stood on a small hill in the park, watching the city wake up. I took a deep breath, and for the first time in a long time, the air didn't feel heavy. It felt hopeful. I realized I had spent so much time mourning what I had lost that I hadn't considered what I might still gain. Maybe this wasn't the end of my story. Maybe it was just a painful, messy new beginning. Max wagged his tail and nudged my hand, urging me to keep moving. As we walked down the hill, I let the moment sink in: the peace, the sunlight, the steady thump of Max's paws beside me. Healing wasn't a sudden, dramatic transformation. It was these quiet moments, stitched together day after day, until one day I'd look back and realize I had built a new life without even noticing. I wasn't there yet, but for the first time, I believed I could get there, step by uncertain step, with Max leading the way. Spring slowly gave way to summer, and the world around me seemed to bloom with second chances. It wasn't just the season changing, it was me too. I could feel it in the way I smiled at strangers again, in the way I dreamed about things I hadn't dared to dream of for months. One afternoon, Max and I sat at our favorite spot in the park, under a huge oak tree whose shade felt like a protective embrace. I was reading a book, something I hadn't had the concentration for in ages, when a light breeze rustled the pages and carried laughter toward me. Families, couples, friends, all living, moving forward. For a moment, a flicker of loneliness pierced me. But then Max rested his head on my knee, his warm brown eyes looking up at me with that pure, endless love only dogs seem capable of. I smiled, feeling gratitude fill the spaces that used to ache. I realized that I had survived something I once thought would destroy me, not by running from the pain, but by facing it, with Max at my side, steady and patient. He had been my lifeline when I didn't even know how to call for help. Looking at him now, I whispered, "We're going to be okay, aren't we?" Max's tail gave a slow, happy thump against the grass. For the first time in so long, I allowed myself to picture a future, a cozy home filled with laughter, maybe a new job, new friends, maybe even love again one day. It didn't feel impossible anymore. It felt distant, but real. I wasn't rushing. I wasn't desperate. I was healing, slowly, quietly, honestly. And as the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting everything in a soft, forgiving glow, I knew that whatever the future held, I wouldn't be facing it alone. I had Max. I had myself. And for now, that was more than enough.